Right. Hey, Jay.
Hey.
I have Jae West here with me today, and we've known each other. I was just looking at reviews, reviewing back on how we got to know each other, and it would have been about 9 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
That
totally.
we've known each other for.
And I think it was just because you were doing the raw food workshops, and I was just genuinely interested.
Yeah.
I came along to one, and then I was like, how do I help? Like, you know, it's like when you see something that you're really inspired by, and I really loved your outlook that it's not about dogmatic or particular way that you have to be in life. It's like what inspires you to be the best version of yourself, and I saw that in that time with the raw food.
Yeah.
So enthusiastic to help.
I know, it was amazing, and I think you ended up coming through Sadell and yoga, the yoga, transcendental yoga space. Yeah. That's incredible. So 9 years, and we've been through a lot in between all of that. Wow.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming today and being on the show. And I wanted to chat to you first about your history. And you have a history, as I said before, of rainbows, and you've been sparkling the world in many ways for many years. Mm-hmm. And your story fascinates me so much, and what you've gotten up to in so many weird, like, not weird and wonderful, but various, like, you know, PhD science to erotic dance to expressional poetry to everything. Mm-hmm. So explain to me a little bit about how you've gotten to this point.
Yes, it's interesting because I don't necessarily think that there was one moment that I've gone, oh yeah, this is where I want to go. Because I was just a natural Perth-grown girl who had mum and dad fully supporting me. They definitely had alternative views on life. They loved that we had Buddhist books in the house, or they'd go do yoga. So I was always introduced to different ways of seeing the world from a young age. Very much community-based down in Fremantle. I then grew up, went to a private all-girls school. It was kind of just your standard school, standard school upbringing. And then it was just after I left high school, and it was that point, that fork in the road, where it was about how do I create my own identity. And that was really empowering for me. And at that point, I actually started dancing in the nightclubs, and I was a backup dancer and choreographer for drag queens. So I kind of grew up with that very different way of seeing life. And seeing how minority groups actually interact with one another, but at the same time also studying my undergrad in science. So this is where that kind of like split started to happen, of like really wanting to foster that creativity and that way of relating to different people, but at the same point just being fascinated by science, by like factual data. And so that took me down the road of ended up doing my honours in exercise physiology. So I was working with athletes to enhance performance with a supplement called sodium phosphate. And that was just the whole research process was really, really fascinating for me, because it wasn't, we have all of the facts and then we just write about it. It's, we have an idea, let's go test it. It could not work at all. And that kind of boggled my mind a little bit of like, oh, cool, I don't need to know all the answers. I can just be curious and see what arises. But I definitely have a passion for helping people and empowering people, especially this preventative way. So it's, and so I went into corporate health and went all around Western Australia doing health consultations with people. And I kind of started to see that people know what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
But it was like this motivation and psychology element that I was kind of missing. And so I was like, oh, this is the missing piece that I need to be upskilled in. So I ended up going back doing the PhD in exercise physiology and health psychology. So it was very interesting. I did the same degree as my dad at the same university. So we both did a science degree. But my mum's passion was health science. So, you know, that shows how much when you have an environment that really fosters you in that realm, you start to strive to new heights. So I had full support of the family through the PhD, which is super important. But at the same time, life started to throw some like other things. I was still dancing at that point, but it started to throw some different different things my way. And so I met a guy called Peter Sharp, who was just doing pop-up experiences. At that point, the Liberators, it hadn't even been coined Liberators. And we just all of a sudden just got on like a house on fire in terms of love dancing, love people, and we're very passionate about making a change and creating community. And so we started teaming up along with a whole group of people in Perth, and we started doing things like dance party on the train. So that was one of our first videos to go viral. And
literally viral.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it showed that need, that desire. I think things only go viral when there's an actual thirst for it.
Absolutely. People could sense that freedom, what you guys were trying to portray. And boom, we want some of that.
Yeah. So that was one of many social experiments that we started to do. And so then over time, it kind of just started getting bigger and bigger. And then we birthed the name The Liberators. And then that went on. We ended up getting to go to Europe and touring there. Me and Pete went to America as well, and just getting to meet people and living life like one step and then the next step, and not thinking too far in advance. It's like, how do I help in this moment? And so in that way, it was kind of like yoga. You know, it was that in the moment presence. And that also inspired me at the same time. I started studying yoga as well. It had always been a part of my life, but actually being certified happened when I was doing the PhD. Now in that seems like I'm doing a lot all at once, but what happened is I did about 1.5 years, 2 years of PhD, took a 6-month break, and that's where I could focus on going on the touring and things like that.
I remember that time.
Which was super, super empowering, because the PhD was using a framework called self-determination theory. And it's this idea that we can do actions for more an intrinsic, so we might just have inherent enjoyment, or it's like play, enthusiasm, or we do things for more those extrinsic. And at that point, I actually had to question for myself the second time I took a 6-month break off the PhD. I was like, am I doing this because it is like a PhD and all the extrinsic drivers behind it, or am I actually doing it because I have curiosity in the subject? I want to learn. And so taking that 6-month break away and taking the pause, doing something else, allowed me to actually recreate that autonomy of going, no, this is for me. I want to finish it for me. So it was a really empowering thing for me to actually learn in my own story. So then when I was doing the research and working with this framework, I could see how it could relate to other choices as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't realise that was that link there for you, which makes sense. And then that creates that curiosity. And the curiosity then from your research, your science base, then flowed over into the Liberators, just to show that, let's see what happens here. That's the experiment that we're doing, but more in that social context. And playfulness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Play I find is a huge part of my life, and it's not necessarily that you have to play physically. It's can we put the lens of play through anything that we do. Like right now, just having this interaction and we're like playing and dancing in our words. Exactly. Or if it's actually getting out in the playground. In saying that, we have definitely, if there's some sprinklers or if there's water gardens going on, I'd probably be one of the first people to start running through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the beauty of having children is that I always see that, curiosity constantly with them. So you're more inclined to join in the play and join in the playground, versus if you didn't have children, then you feel a little bit more of that, holding back and not being able to express yourself. Yeah.
It was fascinating when I first started working with kids, because I'm being a puppeteer now as well. But it's
one more thing.
Just one more thing. But it was really, really fascinating that I had to be confronted with all this self-doubt of like, they see straight through me. They will just say things exactly. They don't have a censor.
I don't like this.
You're boring, miss.
Sorry, I'll try harder next time.
But it's a good, it's that real humbling experience to be like, am I actually being really present right now? and we're giving their full attention, my full attention on someone, because we live in a society where it's like I have 50 tabs open in my head of all the things that I'm doing, my phone's going off, the TV's on in the background, there's music playing, you know, so it's actually, can I be like fully present? And then take that teaching that you have with kids out into any kind of interaction you have with people.
Oh, for sure. Wow. Okay. So puppeteering. That's incredible.
I'm trying to think where we got into the story, but I'm just going to.
That's all right. We'll go back to, so we got to liberators. I want to hear a little bit more about that, and then we can move forward into, you know, where you've come into the space now. But the liberators, when I was following you with the liberators, it was fascinating, just for the fact of obviously the viral videos that were, you know, portrayed across the world. News stories, you know, you standing out in Times Square. Was it Times Square? No, London. Was that London?
Yeah, the first one was London. The second one was, I can talk to you.
Yeah, let's tell me all about that.
Yeah, so the first social experiment that I did that was more self-orientated and based off my own vulnerabilities was bringing to the forefront mental health and in particular eating disorders.
Yes.
So I had during my end of high school, beginning of uni, I had gone through bulimia and then anorexia. And so I kind of just wanted to find a way to meld an experience that I had, make it relatable to other people, but say, hey, there's hope on the other side, and it's just about finding your particular path. For people, I can't talk for all people, but it was just my experience, that creativity and using what I'd gone through to inspire people was my particular path. So what I did was I blindfolded myself in Piccadilly Circus in London and stripped down to my underwear with a sign saying, I'm standing for anyone who's gone through an eating disorder or self-esteem issue like me. Brought love heart on my body to support self-acceptance. And it was, it always does that to me every time I hear this story. It's really, really interesting. And some of the videos are still like coming back for a second round. And what I love as well is it inspired other people. So another woman over in America, Amy, had gone on. She was like a mother of 4 children. You know, and she got up and she did it as well. And it's just the ripple effects that you can then create by being true and vulnerable to something that you've experienced. It allows other people to do that. And so that was one of the first ones that really shifted something for me, because I wasn't wearing makeup. I was crying most of the time. I also got the support of the people around me in terms of, we turned up into Piccadilly Circus and the policemen were walking around. I'm like,
oh no.
I'm about to strip down into my underwear. Like, what is happening?
Indecent exposure.
That was what was running through my head. And it was really interesting because the day before, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, the day before, we'd been doing some social experiments around trust. So another experiment we do is we blindfold ourselves in a public space with a sign saying, I trust you, do you trust me, let's hug. Now we are going back, 5-6 years ago, so this is pre-COVID and things like that, where there's not that touch element. But it was interesting for me. I'd gone up to a policeman that particular day before and been like, this is what we're doing. I was just wondering, if I could have a hug. This is without having the blindfold. I just was intrigued. And which obviously in their code of conduct, they're like, no, I'm not allowed to hug you. Completely fine. But then the next day, going into Piccadilly Circus, I'm already standing there, knowing that the police are walking around somewhere. And I'm standing there. All of a sudden, I hear behind, LA love, just letting you know that me and my fellow officer are to stand to the side. We're not going to let anything happen to you. Very brave what you're doing. This is a terrible English accent. But we're just going with that. I don't actually remember what the accent was like. But it was that turning point for me of like, oh wow, anyone can see vulnerability when there's a true message behind it. And they were absolutely lovely, and they came up and they had a chat to me afterwards. Nothing happened. Everyone was super respectful. It was just a lot of loving affirmation that would come up. and just thanking me. And I was like, oh wow, this is potent work. And then the policeman afterwards, it was a different policeman, but was like, I'd take my hat off, but I've got terrible hat hair. Can I give you a hug? And I was like, whoa, cool. And so you can actually see in the video, if you go and watch the video, at the very, very end after the Liberated logo, there's this cop just giving me like a quick hug, just to like say thank you. And I was just like, oh, that's gorgeous. So that was the first one. And then the second, that was 2015. And 2016, we went to America, and we're just meeting people over in America. And I was just like, I'm going to do another one. Yeah. I can't remember where the idea came from. I was immersing myself in a lot of meditation at that point. Yep. So I find if you're regularly doing meditation, ideas will start to come to you, and there's a stillness that actually is like a petri dish for creativity. Absolutely. So the idea had come very, very strongly to me. So I approached Pete and was like, this is my idea. And he looked at me and was like, you're crazy, but let's do it. So the idea that we ended up doing was, in Times Square in New York, I again blindfolded myself and sat down this time with scissors in one hand, shavers in another, and a sign that said, beauty isn't dependent on your external appearance. Cut or shave off the part of my hair to support this message. And then just let the community cut and shave off my hair. Now, the difference between the two now, when I was in Piccadilly Circus, I was probably standing there for 40, 45 minutes only. Yeah. Times Square was a good over 3 hours. Whoa. Because it took ages for people to actually, they just would, this is the other people retelling to me because I couldn't see anything. Yeah. But they would just stand and watch, being like, is anyone actually going to do it? Yeah, like, is she serious? Is this a joke? Any given, to their credit, there's also performers, and it's like a busking realm area within Times Square. So for many, it must have been like, is what's going on? Is this a trick or? Yeah. But then as time went on, they could see that people would go up and start taking bits off. And the first person to just shave just went straight down the middle. And that was the moment of being like, yep, this is real. So incredible. So they were the two that I particularly fueled, which was based on my own experiences. But the Liberators as a whole goes in many different trajectories. And it's good not performance, but meditations outside office buildings and all sorts. Absolutely. But with that foundational message of there's different ways to feel liberated. And so me going and shaving my hair off doesn't mean that everyone needs to go and shave their hair off. Yeah. It means question what you're attached to. So at that point in time, I had really long hair. So I was like, being a woman, I'm attached to my long hair. Absolutely. And it was really interesting the days afterwards, how empowered I was without hair. I was like, wow, I feel so womanly right now. And we'd get comments, and then that would stimulate conversation with strangers on the street. Yeah. And that's the stuff that I live for. I love just being able to talk to people for no particular reason. It's just being able to share. That's helping people. Yeah, exactly. In any way possible. There are so many ways to help people that we sometimes don't even think outside that box. And that's where the Liberators really gauged my attention. I was like, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And just watching those dance parties on the train, like that was awesome. They could find sing-alongs as well. Because how people get involved and how differently they respond to these sorts of things. Like that's the experiment in itself, to actually watch the changes happen. Yeah. And people just to go, oh my gosh, I can actually woo. And watching and witnessing those pivotal moments where it's like, I'm doing this, like I'm in. It's just like brilliant. And then then you kind of think, what's the ripple effect of when they go to work, and they be like, you can't believe what happened on the way to work today. So I think the idea is being change agents. It's like, how do we change the norm of your standard day-to-day life and actually give people that little spark of inspiration that they can carry on in any different way. It might just give them a smile for the rest of the day. That carries on to other people. Absolutely. Wow. All right. So from the Liberators
tell me a little bit further now. What happened after that?
So I finished the PhD in 2018.
Yeah.
So the actual research topic, I realised I haven't even talked about it. So I was looking at how our motivation for exercise influences our eating behaviours.
Right.
So my research was confirmed that if you exercise for more of those extrinsic reasons, you're then more likely to consciously justify indulging in unhealthy food.
Yeah.
So, that's what I find interesting, because a lot of the time we're putting those rewards out there of like, go to the gym and you'll get this and get that, but are we still fostering that intrinsic motivation of, wow, it is actually a real privilege to be able to move our bodies the way that we do for most people.
Yeah.
Appreciation. Appreciation and gratitude.
The right reasons. That's what it's coming down to, isn't it, too?
Yeah. And I don't want to demonize extrinsic motivation, because now I'm not up to date completely with all the research now, because it's been a number of years. But at the starting point of anyone's journey, if it's not a new habit for you, you might have to use extrinsic motivation to get you there until you're in a pattern, until you're in a rhythm.
Yeah.
So it's not about making things right or wrong, but in terms of your own enjoyment, it's why not encourage something that's going to bring you inherent joy, and also not affect your other choices. It comes back to that ripple effect. The choice that you make in this moment, and everyone's probably felt it, when you wake up in the morning and you've got the choices between, do I go really indulgent breakfast, or whatever your form of it, doesn't necessarily have to be food, but how you start the day might then set you up for the rest of the day, because then you get inspired to do other positive things for yourself. So
absolutely, that's that. Yeah, for sure, that ripple effect. I'm knee deep in a health belief model practice, so you probably were well aware of that at the moment. Completing something for food choice model. So looking at all those factors, the environment, the individual, the food, physiology, everything, behavior, decision making, and then even from that point of view, where I see a lot of people speaking about it in this space, is the willpower. So how much willpower energy we have across the day. And that comes into food and exercise, and even going out into a train and having a dance, like making those decisions. We only have a certain amount of energy put aside for those sorts of things. So, use it wisely.
Like me regulating emotions as well.
Absolutely.
Which I found really, really fascinating. There's some great research out on that. And there's some competing theories with, is it limited, or is it that it just gets revitalized? There's many different viewpoints. So if listeners are interested, they should definitely look down the research path for that one, because there's lots of fascinating articles down there.
Fascinating. So with your honours, I want to come back to that just quickly. Sodium phosphate. Explain to me a little bit about that.
Oh gosh, now you're going back
over a decade. Sorry.
So sodium phosphate, in that time, it only ever been studied in men at that point. So I was the first one to look at it in women.
Which is quite common in research, isn't it?
Because you have to factor in hormones and cycles and things like that. So completely understandable. But my focus with it was, so the idea is it's more so for endurance. Athletes. So, oh gosh, there were competing theories for how it actually worked. But one was the red blood count. You're taking me right back now.
Sorry, stumped you there. But I'm just fascinated. I'm like, well, what were they using the sodium phosphate for? Endurance purposes. It was endurance
purposes. But that was more so for the performance side of things. My interest was sodium phosphate can be a slight appetite suppressant. So I was like, this was a modality that was used. We're talking over a decade ago that I did my honours. They were using it within that realm, but what if someone was actually then having their appetite suppressed? Is it then affecting other elements? And that actually haven't been studied. So that was my main focus, is looking at the appetite and the nutrition side of things, rather than the offshoot of improving performance.
Okay, fascinating. All right, sorry, just brought you back to that for a sec.
No, I'm trying to wrap my brain. It's so interesting with that kind of stuff, because you're so immersed in it for a period of time, and then if it's not relevant for you anymore, the brain goes
straight out, isn't it?
Gone, In terms of intricacies, I know the rough elements.
Yeah, but again, when you submerge yourself, and I find it at the moment, I'm doing a lot of research for the masters. You're doing assignments, you're doing research, you're so focused on that one topic, but then you have to, then you switch to another topic, and so you lose a lot of that information out of that last topic because you have to solely focus. Yeah,
repeating and talking to people about it, things like that. It's like a language, really. If you start learning a language and then you don't do it for 10 years, you're not going to remember.
Yeah, you got to practice. I'm rubbish at languages. That says anything. All right, so from the Liberators, then obviously PhD, and then tell me a little bit what happened after the PhD.
PhD, so then I started working after that point. Well, I took a little bit of a break, and then I was kind of reconfiguring because after that point, I was like, I don't think the academic realm is my path. Yeah. Although I'm interested in learning. Yeah. So it is interesting. I am now starting to write for an online magazine that brings WA's research to the forefront, which is brilliant. Amazing. Yeah, Particle, if you haven't seen it. That's very cool. So I'm still getting that curiosity of getting to learn things, but being a bridge of how do we take research and actually make it accessible to everyone, which then creates in my head the ripple effects again. Particle, yeah. Very cool name. Yeah. So they're great. So that's one element that I've done. I was working with kids, as I mentioned, so being a puppeteer, educating through STEM, different things. So got to go all around Western Australia. Took a bit of time up in Broome, was doing some programs up in Broome, mainly around sustainability actually, which was, you saw how passionate the kids got around sustainability because they are affected with floods and all the natural disasters. So seeing these young kids inspired to make a difference was just very, very rewarding to see. And then while I was still doing that, I've gone on many different tangents. One was actually going down more of the sexuality, so expression and seeing different platforms to be able to see arousal and sexuality. So when was it? I heard of a teacher called Jaya, she's a somatic sexologist over in America, probably about 4 years ago. And it was one of those moments where I listened to a podcast or listened to the framework that she was describing, and I was just mesmerized. And I was just listening and taking it all in, and actually then going through my science lens and being like, oh, cool, this actually makes a little bit of sense as well. So then years later, it was last year, 2020, I was like,
well, where are we again? The world's turned upside down, hasn't it?
Especially we're coming to May nearly as well. I studied with her, ended up doing a coaching program last year, which was about 8 months online. And I was the first person in Western Australia to be certified, and one of, I think it's about 5 of us in Australia as a whole. And so the framework looks at the idea that there are 5 different ways that someone can be aroused sexually. So we are talking mainly in intimate settings right now, but some of the concepts you can then extrapolate to other areas of your life. And the way that I like to describe it to people is if you've heard Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. So for me, it's like the 5 arousal versions of the love languages. With that idea that we can be approaching our partner speaking the language that we're familiar with, but yet they are on a completely different tangent, and you're not meeting, not getting that authentic connection or the rich connection that you really want. So I can go through the 5 quickly.
Go for it. I want to hear all about this. And then we have to go into your poetry too, because you're amazing poetry and being in love. So we've got to cover a lot still.
So your first of the blueprints is your energetic. So these are people that get aroused by anticipation. It's feeling the subtleties between people, and actually the distance actually brings on that arousal. So we say that each of the blueprints have a superpower. So not that you have to strive for it, it's just naturally can be more accessible to some of these people. So those kind of superpowers for an energetic is they're typically very empathic. So they will feel every subtlety of their partner and be able to really drop into that which is beautiful.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's not necessarily about the physical contact. It's not about the orgasm. It's not about the end goal. It's about the pure presence with another person.
Yeah.
Yeah. The shadow aspects of that, though, is if someone comes in too fast, too strong with sexuality, it's, yeah, exactly. It's short-circuiting. It's like, wow, too much.
I'm out.
Yeah. And the other thing is boundaries. So because you can feel what other people are feeling, sometimes at a young age, you would have would have decided that the pain of someone else when you say no or reject someone is not worth it, and so your boundaries start to get a lot more loose because you don't want to hurt the other person because you feel it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that their medicine or what they need to work on is actually formulating and trusting themselves in their boundaries again.
It's incredible. So just pull you up there. So you've got these five areas, and for each you look at this. I love how you put it. The superpowers, the things that you need to work on, and then the areas that obviously that you're good at and that you can focus on. So those sorts of things that you're looking at for each one of those 5 branches.
Yeah. So the last point is just something that you can look at if you want to heal. If you resonate with the shadow, that's where a lot of the time you'll create your own action plan. But in saying that, you might heal or expand that particular blueprint, not by that particular blueprint. It could be actually using some of the others. So that last little point was more so just a reflection as people, if they do resonate with like, oh yeah, that's me, like I'm really bad at creating boundaries, or I'm really bad at confrontation and things like that. It's like, cool, well, that might just be a point to reflect on if it's relevant. But the main things you look at, one of the modules that we do look at is healing and blueprints. So that can come in forms of like, how do I take more responsibility for myself? But then also, what action steps do I need to take? Maybe what judgments do I need to let go of other people or myself as well? So there's many different ways of what we call healing.
The sexuality space, I think, is again, like, periods, menstruation, being in love with your body again and having that respect for your body. All those areas are so unspoken of, are still so taboo, and I think that's why I love the fact of, even in the podcast, like I mentioned with Kimmy, we talk about kink and sexuality. I think it needs to be spoken more of, so people become more aware of it and actually gain the best out of that life force energy, which is that sexuality energy, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I like about that is when you start talking openly about sexuality, it releases the shame. And shame, if you go into like Brene Brown's stuff, it's like shame is like, you go into yourself, you disconnect from community, you isolate, it's a very, very lonely world. And so why do we need to be lonely? And as you said, sexuality is that spark, that creativity. It's going to cut you off from community and your vitality as well. So.
And hormones, they're
and hormones,
like, we might as well use them to our fullest advantage. All this sort of energy balances out your hormones on that physical level.
And also talking about it starts to dissolve judgment that other people can have, because sometimes we create judgment if we don't know. It's an easier way to protect yourself. If we don't know about something, it's like, that's foreign. I'm going to distance myself.
Get hurt, or we could get shut down, or any of that stuff.
Or not being able to get it right. If we don't know something, it's like, oh, well, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. Exactly. And it happens sometimes on such a subtle level. So the more we just openly just share about things, it's like, oh, that either resonates or it doesn't resonate. If it doesn't resonate, you don't have a judgment about it. It's just, that doesn't work for me. If it does, you get curious and you explore more.
Exactly. It's either or. Okay, sorry, I cut you off there. So first one is the empathy or empathetic person.
So energetic. Energetic is the term that we use. Your second is essential. So these are the people that love all of their senses. Like, straight away I start like touching myself. Because these are the people that like are touching on the so they're very tactile. They love senses. They love smells. They love massages. They're usually wearing clothes of different textures, just because they love the feeling all the time, and that gets them in their body. So these are people that they love being in their body because they love feeling all the sensations. So the superpowers go along with that. Is that again, it's not orgasm based. It's about connection. If you've got I'm going a couple of hours. That's a long time, but we'll go with that because I said it. Yeah, a couple of hours to just massage and be with someone. Yeah, exactly. That's it's a little bit of a mistake for us here. That's what we're doing.
Hold on, like the sensual one. Hang on. You're gonna tell me what type I am.
So they're very, very tactile, and very much about the senses as well. So like when you walk into a space and there's like some incense burning or different aromatic oils, things like that, they're very attuned to that stuff. So they know how to set the scene of walking into a place that creates an experience. And as I mentioned, it's not necessarily orgasm based. It's more so about connection and having that experience of being close. So it's like being able to cuddle a lot and have those types of experiences. Your next is your sexual. So your sexual is your stereotypical way of seeing arousal or sex.
Okay.
And we'll get turned on by nudity, orgasms, very straight edge, but not simplistic, but not superficial.
Okay.
So it's very much that they're connected in with their desire centers, because they know what they want, and it's very direct. Which is very beautiful and not always celebrated. So this framework creates a space for every way of sexuality to be celebrated, and so it releases shame around that.
Yeah, because I was going to bring that up and say, that the typical viewpoint of sexuality at the moment in, where everyone would see it would be what's portrayed on movies, what's portrayed on TV shows, and that's the only exposure a lot of people get. So how do they know that the other realms are there, or what type of actual, personality or blueprint that they are? This sounds fascinating. All of this, I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so their superpowers go along with it. They can be very direct. They know what they want. They know where they're going with things, which makes it, in terms of being able to please your lover, very, very simplistic and very direct and fun, and also just a huge sex drive. They can go from 0 to 100 like this. It's like it's on. which is great. It's very, to be on the other side of the receiving factor of that. It's like, wow, this person really wants me. Amazing. So it's being able to actually celebrate that. The shadow aspect of that, though, is definitely that being so direct can also set up for rejection if someone's not ready for that intensity, and then you create shame and be like, oh well, my intensity is too much, my sex drive is too much, rather than having it celebrated. So that can be one. They can also get very confused, like, why do you need all the bells and whistles? Like, isn't sex supposed to be easy? Like, A plus B is that's it. Yeah. So it's again just having that patience to actually explain, like we've talked about before, explain why you need other things if you are a different blueprint.
Yeah, this is fascinating because again, when I spoke to Kimmy and we talked about kink, in my head, trying to figure this out in terms of this logical explanation science type brain, I'm thinking, why do some people want BDSM and the kink side of things and all the equipments and all that stuff, and then why do other people not need that or not feel like that's necessary for them? So that in itself, I was like, hold on, like, what are we missing in between? What is that? And now this has explained that to me.
Well, but I'll come back to that point, because the last blueprint, I think, might feed into that one. No, I love it. It stimulates so much conversation, because people start to have those aha moments of, oh, I made this, or that makes sense for my ex-partner or this person, and
that's why.
And being like, oh, whoa, I didn't like accept that in that person, or I didn't know how to meet that need, or it just creates more self-acceptance to our sexuality. But as you talk about it, the next one is kink. So the way that Jaya defines kink, though, is anything that's taboo for you.
Okay.
So in this way, someone who's grown up in a religious background and has never had any exposure, maybe having sex before marriage is taboo. Those elements, versus for another person is that BDSM way of seeing things. And again, split into two, in that it can be psychological kink. So this is purposely playing with power plays, it's role plays, it's it's more fantasy based as well.
Yeah.
And then you've got the physical sensation based kink, which is typically what you see with your BDSM or whips, being restrained, ropes, shibari, things like that. So I like to create that difference, because sometimes we might think of king because we might be having fantasies a lot of the time, or we crave the taboo, or there's other things that go on in our mind, but it's not necessarily that we like any of the physical sensation of kink. So we can separate those two. Some people love both as well. So it gives space for any of that realm. So in terms of superpowers, very creative lovers. They just want to explore. They want to play. They're going to try new things all the time.
Toolkit.
Toolkit, but also like what's the realm or the space that we can create in imagination as well. Where can our fantasies take us? It could even just be sharing our fantasies with partner. You know, there's that element of storytelling as well in there, which I find fascinating. Creative, and the shadow aspects though is that shame. So
did I think of that? Shouldn't be doing that.
Shouldn't be doing that. Or will I be accepted? Will love be removed if I actually ask for this particular want or need? And it's probably the one that people don't always necessarily know that they are until they start exploring, or they have the acceptance in this realm to start exploring. The judgment. The other thing is that the fetishes can become quite niche. So it's like I can only be in this position this time of day. I'm taking this to extreme. While the light is coming in this angle, it's obviously not going to be that extreme, and I don't want to make fun people, but it is that there can be particular niches that arise that then narrow down our expression of sexuality. And in my head, this framework is about you don't have to embody all of them if you don't want to, but it creates a lens and a framework to know that there are different ways. So it can create freedom of expression
in all these blueprints.
But there's no hierarchy. That's one thing that Jae West says. There's no hierarchy. It's not like I should strive to be this type of blueprint or that this one is lesser. They're all exactly the same. And that comes to our last one, so shapeshifter. So shapeshifter is strong and can use all 4 pathways as a form of turn on or arousal. So again, very creative, very explorative. Love to just try everything in terms of their superpowers, and as a lover, amazing, because they'll want to meet all of the needs, regardless of what blueprint you are. In saying that goes hand in hand with the shadow. Is if they have a partner that only is strong in one of the blueprints, they might not necessarily feed all aspects of themselves. So again, similar to a sexual, they might have created a story early on that I'm too much, my desire is too much, what I need or want is too much, and I haven't been celebrated in that realm. So again, once you have a framework of realizing this is what you need, you can find ways to make sure that all elements of yourself are fed. And that doesn't necessarily need to mean sexually. It could be things like, oh, well, for my sensual, I'm going to start booking in some massages a bit more regularly, or start wearing clothes. It's like day-to-day stuff. How do I integrate this knowledge? But why, backtracking to what you were saying before, why do people go on different paths? It's a theory that I have, is that maybe when we're born, we're all shapeshifters. So we have access to all pathways, but it's then through our conditioning, it's through experiences that we have and the pain or the suffering that we go through, that we then get shaped into one particular realm more than another. Because I did a post on this recently. It's very socially acceptable for a woman to be energetic or sensual. But you go into being a sexual, and all of a sudden there's things like that, and vice versa. If a man is not this macho, like I'm just gonna take this one for the team, whatever that is, I don't know.
Love it.
My partner's gonna be loud.
What is she going?
But them not having permission to really be sensitive and empathetic and emotional. In some realms that is really celebrated, and some it isn't. So this, I find, is a part of the reason why we might actually be pigeonholed or shaped into
and
different
confused.
realms.
And then shamed, and then for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's just one part that, that's just the
Yeah.
blueprints in itself. But then it goes on to all different frameworks as well within that.
Wow. So first of all, when you're looking at those 5, is there a link with personality types as well? So, so when you've got the creative type, is that person going to be more looking at creativity in their life? Is there been any links to like a personality?
I don't know. There's definitely,
I think, fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for.
Or is it that hidden underlying, like I don't get that creativity in my life? That's where my focus is in this part of my life.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I'm not aware of any direct research around that. But one thing I do find fascinating for some of them. So for a sexual blueprint, the act of having sex and orgasming is actually going to, well, maybe not always orgasm, but that sex and that is then going to fuel them in all other areas. It's kind of like they use sex to rewind and refuel, versus essential will, like, they'll need to slow down and relax to then be able to receive. Yeah. Because some of the shadow aspects of essential is that if you get up into your head, into your to-do list, you're not in contact with all these sensations, you're not in contact with the body. So if you're really, really stressed, it's a lot harder for you to drop in, which it would be fascinating to also link in with different hormones as well.
Exactly. And because obviously, in clinic here, the most common, things that I hear are low libido, high stress, and those connections are so strong. So, I would say a lot of that stress aspect, not just the hormonal side of things, but also just the fact that people just can't get back into their body. They can't get back in to feel that sensuality. And the majority of those people are women, and they're, more maybe of the sensual type where they need more of that and not realising it. Yeah. So when you're going through sessions with people then, run me through a bit of an idea of where it sort of starts and where it sort of finishes, what you look at in between, how you help people, why people might come in and ask for help or look for this sort of, way of what would you call it? Is it a therapy? Is it a course? Is it a program? Like, what is it sort of defined as?
Cool. I'm going to backtrack because I don't like the idea of helping someone, because this lens is not necessarily, it's not counselling, and it's not like having psychology session. It's a framework of exploration, and that's the way that I go into it. It's like, here's something that will invite more play into your sexuality, and it's about expression. So it can come in different forms. So the first is that just introducing them. Sometimes actually just having this discussion that there are different ways of seeing sexuality, they have that aha moment, and that's what all they need. So by no means do I mean that everyone needs to do everything. It's that autonomy to go, cool, this is the step, I do want to take it further or I don't. So just knowing about the core erotic blueprint is the first step. Then we start going into how do you feed your erotic blueprint once you determine it first, because there's also going back. So in between knowing it, I can talk to you about it, but your body might respond very differently to different types of touch, which are in line with them. So I don't personally do the touch on someone else, but I can guide someone through it, like a meditation where they might do sort of light energetic, might be just like really lightly, or even just hovering over their any body part. And then your sensual is more the caressing and the curving, and then your sexual going straight to genitals, and then kinky can be your scratching, your slapping, things like that. So you can give them different exploration tools to do either by themselves, or if they have a partner that wants to do it with them, they can start to explore that. Because I didn't even realize, I'm very open with sharing all the aspects of myself. And I didn't realize that I loved scratching until I was in, not necessarily this program, but I was exploring some other frameworks a couple of years ago, and someone had scratched me, and I was like, ooh, that's a bit fun. Like I started
energy.
giggling. I got the energy rush. And so actually that's a good point to distinguish is when I say arousal, it's not what comforts me and makes me want to go to sleep or nourish.
Yes.
That's important. And you need that at other times. But arousal is like, oh, what gives me that vitality and that spark?
It's that life force energy, right? Life force. So that's that sexuality energy. That's a really good differentiation, because I find that that's hard to explain to a lot of people. It's like, what are you meant to feel when you're aroused? What is that meant to feel like? Yeah. Because of traumas and past experiences and conditioning, people might see that as being looked after. Yeah. But I see it as being energized or inspired, or that feeling, like you say, of like bubbling. Yeah, like woo, excited. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like that's, I think, a really, really important part to distinguish for people, so that they have those cues to start to look for. So determining blueprints, so there's a couple of ways you can do it, and you can also just do something called body mapping, which is just exploring the body and going, okay, I like stroking on my arm, that's nice. Oh, but no, if you do it at the neck, I really like. So it's about like self-exploring yourself, so that when you come to a partner, it's like, oh, I know these points I really, really like. And then do some exploration together as well, with not necessarily sex the outcome. A nice thing that we like to do is something called sex labs. Me and my partner are both scientists, so love it. And so we kind of separate and go, cool, we're going to explore. So a sex lab session. Yeah, we're just going to explore. It's not about having sex in the end. We actually separate those two things. So then again, we get more information. Yeah. So we're also always changing as well. So giving ourselves permission to always explore and always change is really, really important. Yeah. I would say, a lot of people don't even get a chance to even fully truly know their partner, even after years and years and years. So I know that for certain, and I'm hearing that from a lot of different people. Yeah. Oh, my partner didn't know that about me. Or what? What's the vulnerability of giving yourself permission that you don't know? Yeah. And that's a really humbling experience, especially when you're around someone all the time. We naturally create these expectations, whether they're imposed on us or we just create them ourselves. Yeah. Like, I should know this. I don't want to speak up because I actually should know this. Yeah, but you don't. You never know, really. No. Things are constantly changing. And, it's on the flip side of that, it's also being aware when we are reacting, say a partner did forget something. It's not shaming them for it as well. It doesn't mean that they don't love you. Yeah. I mean, if it's happening a lot and reoccurring, then that's a different conversation. But if they can have 120 things going on in their life, it's being patient with people as well. And if they're asking you, rewarding them and giving them space to know the answer as well, rather than punishing. Yeah, absolutely. So from that sex lab. Sorry. No, so haven't even. Tell me about this. Determining. Oh gosh, we're going on so many sites. It's not like my life. It's just like. Sorry, I can bring that on. Sorry. Cool. So we go find erotic blueprints, determining your own. Yep. Going into feeding. Yep. So exercise you can do at home is once you know your own blueprint, it's going, actually, how are all the different ways that I can either individually or have someone else feed my blueprint. So it might be you realize it's like, wow, I actually don't get enough physical touch in a day. Yeah. Maybe I need to ask my friends for a few more hugs, or I do need to book in for massages. It's like, once you know how to fuel something, start inviting it and filling up your cup. It's energy, right? This makes so much sense to me. Because a lot of people, I'm so tired. It might not just be that, lack of food or whatever it is. I have everything else sorted, but they still feel tired. It's this life force energy. We're not getting what we need. Yeah. So important. So important. So feeding, and then we go into speaking. So you can actually, I can people watch now and actually start to pick up the verbals and non-verbals of what people are. But it's really important, because this is where the framework can then be taken outside, not just in the bedroom, in that if I know that you're an energetic, I'm going to be my posture is going to be a lot more upright and be really present. I'm going to not distract. I'm going to maybe speak a little more softly because you're a bit more sensitive. I'm speaking really quickly as well. So that kind of, as essential, I need to really slow down. Just going to take our time.
rush. You know, because I don't like to be rushed.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
cool, if I know that about
Someone else.
Yeah. Or if I do know someone's sensual, I might be more tactile with them, especially if they're going through a hard time. You know, they will need that support a little bit more. So speaking the blueprints allows you to kind of, you know, take that to your partner or yourself, so you can ask for what you need as well, or extrapolate it outside
and understand what that person also needs because of their blueprint.
Speaking, then we go into healing. So healing can be a number of different things. It can be guided meditation. It can be looking at judgments, getting curious about different things. It can also be that point where if it is trauma related, I do openly say to people, I do have a doctorate, but it's not specifically in clinical psychology. So I'm not going to preach that I'm going to fix anything. You know, that's where we can refer, and I'm here to support any additional contributors, because I'm not the only one that needs to be, or it might be looking at hormones and things like that. That can also be affecting someone's sexuality and ability to heal.
Fully.
And then the last bit is expanding. And so I do say, once you know this framework and you're like, I'm a sexual and I don't need to change, I'm just going to stay as a sexual. Great, you can embrace that. You don't need to change anything. But for some people, it's like, oh, that'd be pretty fun to actually be able to speak multiple things or meet my partner in a different way. So when we go into expanding the blueprints, it's looking at how do we step into maybe a different blueprint that's not familiar to ourselves.
That's fascinating. So running workshops on these and then guiding people through the different ways. And exploring it. So giving different ideas, different examples. Wow.
So it's workshops, and then we also do the coaching. So your coaching sessions can be in that 8-week type module. So I just explained before, we kind of flesh it out a little bit more, so you've got that time. And then also when you have it over a period of time, you have homework and things that you can actually be held accountable for as well, because we can always get that spark of inspiration. But how do we integrate that as well? So I offer a number of different things in that realm as well. And there's some other things in the pipeline which haven't quite formulated yet, but linking it in with the dance and stuff like that.
That's incredible.
So we'll see. Because I am the first one to bring it here, it's about just paving the way first. Because people haven't even heard of the Erotic Blueprints. So my first aim is to go, cool, let's get this information out there, because I think Jae has done an amazing job, and she's, you know, had 2 decades in somatic sexology and really, really curious about people. So this was a framework that I resonated with, which again just allows self-expression. Like many aspects of my life, it's definitely about celebrating who we are as individuals.
It's incredible. So your website has all this information on it as well. Is it jwest.com.au?
Okay. Just .com.
.com. Okay, so jwest.com. So I want to just explore dancing. So your self-expressive dance, love it. Love it so much. I still need to do some dance with you. Like I love a bit of dance, but I've never done to the extent that you have. So give a little bit of information about that to me, as well as how you might explore that with that erotic.
So I mentioned earlier on, so I started dancing and choreographing for drag queens quite early on. And I had, for some reason, when I was in primary school, high school, I just started seeing patterns of body formations and started choreographing at a very young age. I don't know, I was just fascinated by music. And so I didn't actually have any specific technical training behind me. Don't get me wrong, when I went to my high school, I did do dance there, so I did have elements of dance and a platform to be able to choreograph. So I was head dancer, and I would choreograph for the group dance competitions and things like that. So I had a platform of people believing in me, which again, it comes back to that community. When you've got a community believing in your support, you can do anything. So I definitely dived into that realm, but it was very interesting. I was choreographing it, and I started dancing it to hip hop academies here and teaching there. And I started to find that if I was purely just doing it week after week, creativity on demand, there was an element of me that started to get a little bit resentful. It's like isn't what I do dance for. It's not to be creative on demand. It's because I love moving my body. And it wasn't about all elements. I was also in a female dance group called Mixtape, which is awesome. Just to like, you don't actually think there's like these little battle crews that happen and battle competitions. There are, like,
really?
it's great
like
fun.
The movies.
Yeah, like the movies. It's great fun.
That's so cool.
And it's a really beautiful way of expressing and teamwork of coming together, because dancing can also be purely solo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of happened, and then I started getting to this point where I was like, I'm just a bit exhausted, and it's not that fun, playful thing that I fell in love with. And if you've gathered anything from my personality, I love to look at what actually brings me that spark of
joy,
play.
passion. Yeah.
So I kind of just took put it on the back burner for a bit and took a pause. And then a couple of years later, I came across Gabrielle Roth's 5 Rhythms, which is a dance meditation.
Yeah.
So again, that has 5 different ways of being able to move the body, whether it's more staccato and masculine or flowing. So she found a different way of being able to express and put it into a framework. And I thought that was really, really fascinating. And I wasn't expecting it. I think I was doing a breathworks workshop or something completely different. So I wasn't expecting movement. But again, it sparked that inspiration of, is there other ways of being able to dance? That would have been my early 20s, and started going down the rabbit hole of looking at ecstatic dances, different movement meditations, 5 rhythms, anything I could get my hands on. Went over to Melbourne, did some workshops over there with how enneagrams can be moved through dance, a whole heap of different things. And it got my curiosity for dance and movement back up. And at the same time, then obviously a couple of years later, Liberator started, which was definitely movement based, and we do a monthly dance now, which is about bringing community together, and we implement some like playful connection games, and then we go into the dance and movement. So we create that self-expression once we have a container that's about self-acceptance and expression.
Safety.
And safety. So then after that, I started looking at how to be a bridge between purely technical stuff, because once I had started dancing and teaching at the 2 dance academies, I started getting a lot more training behind me. And so I was like, there's so many amazing dance modalities that actually rewire our brain to actually create new pathways of movement, and that can create new expressions in us. So that's where Kunda Diva was birthed, which was originally female only, but then I started taking that into both genders and people that don't identify with genders. And the idea is that we can map different archetypes. And because I have a background in acting as well, which I realise we haven't touched on.
We need like 2 hours.
Oh gosh. It was mapping out the idea that archetypes can be a way of us accessing things that aren't inherently in our nature. So I would go through the different archetypes. So we'll go back to females for now, but using different dance modalities. So we'd start at Wild Woman. So if you're yoga based and you like chakras, it was more the base chakra. It's like, how do we get primal? And so I linked that to dancehall. So we'd learn tips, tricks, and modalities within dancehall, dance routine within dancehall, and then part of the lesson would be a structured element, and then we turn the lights off, and it was just about expressing yourself in music that evoked that real Wild Woman. So you can start to have a look at how different ways of moving the body can then be integrated into self-expression. Second was Lover, so we learned striptease and burlesque. Third was Warrior, so we did hip hop, popping and locking, breaking. And then 4th was Mother, So we do contemporary, more lyrical based stuff.
Yeah.
And then priestess would be belly dancing.
Yeah.
And so I had a very good friend, Sarah Faye, come in, who would actually come and do the belly dancing, and she's incredible in that room. So yeah, again, outsourcing where I needed.
So many different things.
Yeah. So I find, for some people, they love that archetype or creating a story around a way of expressing because it makes it more accessible. For some people, they just want to go straight to the dancing. So again, it's just how do we make things more easily accessible for people, and very much about, combining different things as well, and seeing this common thread that the themes of some of the archetypes I found did naturally start to link in. And if I can help someone embody, say, warrior, for example, and they're learning the dance move, and then they go into their real life and their natural reaction is to go, oh, I can't do this, or like cower in, the body language starts to change. It's like, cool, can I remember some of the body language stuff that happens in dance? Not that you have to start busting out a dance and crumping or anything like that, but it might give you some
posture.
Yeah, it's
really just that
posturing.
feeling that you get while you're dancing, and how empowered you feel. Yeah, in different ways.
And then the dance started to migrate a little bit more into 2019. My partner, or now partner, sent out a request to see if anyone wanted to create a fringe show. And so a group of friends from very different backgrounds, we've got doctors, lawyers, podiatrists, engineers, it was a reminder for us though that creativity can be in anyone. And so we birthed the Hairy Godmothers, and we started doing fringe performances through that, which was
dance and acting.
Dancing, acting, we also sing. We all sing as well. So, but it was also how do we bring topics that are at the forefront that maybe aren't always talked about. So periods, we have one song that's all about like periods and being able to talk about periods. Or what it means to be a man, or genital variety and celebrating genital variety. So there's such an array of different topics.
Just thinking about food variety, that's a good one.
Oh well, you might like our next show.
I talk about food in here.
Great. Oh gosh, we're reminded to get your expertise. We have, the thing is, we have so many ideas within our group. But yeah, one of them is around food. Okay. So good. We'll have a chat afterwards off screen.
Fart varieties. There's another one.
Yeah.
My kiddos would love that.
What was about kids show? Kids show, fringe show.
There is, There's a book. I can't not mention this. There's a Father Christmas book. Yeah. And it's to Old MacDonald, and it sings Old MacDonald. Father Christmas heard a fart. And it goes through all the different fart noises and how to make them with like trumpet sounds and.
Wow. Okay.
It's so funny.
To educate
kids on
this.
That's our nightly book read at the moment. So Christmas.
Oh, that's great.
Always gets love. Sorry. Off track. Completely there. We talked about farts. So back into the dance, and then now you're going to try and merge that with this erotic blueprint. Yeah. So that archetype type thing, I can see that really,
Yeah, archetypes and elements there. And then also, again, that can be an element of expanding the blueprints, but also depending on which blueprint it is. So sensual, for example, one of the ways that you can expand it is getting into contact dance or things like that, where it's very tactile and flowing, or slow dancing with someone and having bodies close. So for some blueprints, it's already a way of feeding the blueprint. For other people, it might be finding a new way of expanding into something different. So
the healing aspect too.
Yeah, so it isn't fully mapped out yet, but yeah, you're starting to catch onto those threads of they're all pointing to the same way, and sometimes movement. For some people, movement is an easy access to embody new things. For some people, it really isn't, but it's a challenge that they want to give themselves and actually just even staying there. So in particular for energetics, who can get really overwhelmed by too much stimulus, their idea might not necessarily be going in and being in the middle of the dance floor. It might actually just be turning up is their step in, and observing is the step in in expanding one of their blueprints.
Yeah.
So I think an important thing is to never compare yourself to other people, or when you're in those settings, especially in dance, you don't need to compare yourself. It's fine where your natural edges and what you want to achieve, and then just focus on that, because then you walk away going, cool, I did this, not, oh my gosh, everyone's judging me because I didn't even dance. If a container is set up, and I like to hope that I create that space for people to be like, non-judgment.
Yeah.
It's about celebrating. If that's where someone's edge is, then honor that. Consent is a huge part of working in this realm. People need to feel safe, because then you're just creating more trauma for people.
Absolutely.
If they don't feel safe.
Meeting people where they are at versus where they should be, or where people think they should be.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So, acting as well on top of that brings all of this amazing, and I'm so excited to watch what you've got next in store, and I actually want to come along to some of your workshops as well. So sign me up to some of those. I love the fact that you're doing it here. There is nothing like that here, like you said. So I'm really excited to see you be doing this and what your experience brings into all of that. So thank you.
Pleasure.
So where can people find you, find out more information? Any workshops coming up that you've got, live at the moment? Or
I do. Well, I do have one in 2 days' time, but that one has sold out. So then I'm just mapping out where the next one will be, because venue space is actually sometimes the hardest part to actually find, where people can relax and have like yoga equipment, but then also a space where a more a lecture style element comes in. So I'm just networking with people at this point, and we'll have another couple coming in like from June onwards. Will be a lot, because I'm doing a vision quest in May.
Of course you are.
I know one before, so this is new for me.
What people say to me is like, yeah, Jodi, of course you're loading yourself up more. I'm like, yeah, of course you are. Just like always on the mission to challenge and create and have passion, which I think is a beautiful way of living, isn't it? Yeah, it's incredible.
Keeps life exciting.
Absolutely. So social medias as well.
Social
Jae
West. So Jae West. So there is actually a page I've created now. So that's the easiest way, just to separate business from my personal stuff now. So Jae West is the page, and then website is jaewest.com. Mentioned.
Excellent. Amazing.
And then all the people that I've mentioned. So Jae, you can go to her website as well, which again will be in my descriptions. Liberators is the Liberators International. Who else have I mentioned? The Hairy Godmothers is on Facebook as well. And I'm very sorry if I'm forgetting anyone. We've talked about a lot of things.
All right, well, thank you so much. It was so good to see you, and thank you for coming in here and actually having a face-to-face, which is so much more better than I think than being over there, over the computer, which sometimes only options we've had in the world. So thank you so much. Well.